Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session of the Kirloskar Vasundhara Film Festival 2021. Today, we have with us wildlife researcher Neeraj Mahar. Neeraj is currently pursuing his PhD from the Wildlife Institute of India at Dehradun. Today, Neeraj will talk about the near-threatened black-necked crane, Grus nigricollis. This magnificent bird resides in the Himalayan mountains and parts of central China and northern India. In the winter, they descend to the southern parts of China and Bhutan. Hailing from a predominantly Buddhist region, they are central to Buddhist mythology and culture and considered as harbingers of peace. This species, unfortunately, has succumbed to the pressures of development and is now listed in Schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act. In 2020, a reassessment of the crane's population led its status to be changed from vulnerable to near threatened in the IUCN Red List. Without any more delay, I welcome Neeraj Mahar to help us understand the species and its conservation value and challenges. Over to you, Neeraj.
Thank you, Dr. Nulkar, for your brief introduction. Today, I'll be talking about a bird which is going through enormous challenges in the Trans-Himalayan region of India and Tibet. And the name is black-necked crane. First of all, I would like to take your attention to my first slide. As you know that Ladakh is a Trans-Himalayan region of India. It is an extension of Tibetan Plateau towards Indian territory. Usually we know that Himalaya is differentiated in three major regions: Shivaliks, Lesser or Middle Himalaya, and the Greater Himalaya. In this picture, you can see a frozen lake, which is known as Somoruri Lake. It is a Ramsar site, and it is situated in the Trans-Himalayan region of Ladakh, which is known as Changthang. Changthang is a Ladakhi word, which means Chang means is east and Thang means plains, eastern plains of Ladakh. Onset of springs brings several species of water birds to these wetlands, including black-necked crane, common merganser, common tern, bar-headed goose, and ruddy shelduck, and many other birds. Apart from birds, there are certain top predators like the wolves, which are thriving in these ecosystems, especially in Changthang, because the Changthang has broad valleys and rolling hills, which is a suitable habitat for these carnivores, apart from snow leopards. Additionally, this landscape has beautiful creatures like marmots, voles, and pikas, which are the herbivore species of this landscape. Coming to the habitats, as you know that Ladakh has a major river called Indus, which forms the various beautiful riverine wetlands of this region, including some of the breeding sites of black-necked cranes. The high altitude lakes of this area forms lacustrine wetland, and marshes of this area forms polystrine wetlands for the breeding sites of black-necked crane. Coming to my study species, as you know that black-necked crane is known as Grus nigricollis, which is locally known as Chartungtung Karmo. It is called Chartungtung Karmo in Tibetan or Ladakhi language, which is found in Tibet, India, and Bhutan. Recently, it has been downlisted as near threatened species, and it has about 10,000 individuals globally. It is also legally protected under the Indian Wildlife Protection Act as a Schedule 1 species, as well as CITES, which is an international treaty to conserve wild species of flora and fauna. The average height of this species reached up to the 1 meter, and weight is about 6 kg. So it is a huge bird in this landscape, which comes from the Tibetan Plateau during the summer season. Previously, various studies have been conducted in this landscape, right starting from 1920s by Ludlow to recent in 2014 by Chandan et al. As you can see in the first study, there were about 3 individuals, which has now increased up to the 100 individuals in the Changthang Wildlife Sanctuary. Apart from black-necked crane, number of tourists, number of free-ranging dogs, and defense infrastructure has been increased over the years. This is my study site where I studied these black-necked cranes on the Changthang Wildlife Sanctuary, which is in red dot. The sanctuary has an area of 4,000 square kilometer with average altitude of 4,000 meter, which can reach up to 7,000 meters sometime. And as you know that it is a cold arid region, so it receives very less rainfall, about less than 100 millimeter rainfall annually. But in terms of temperature, the temperature reaches up to the 30 degrees centigrade during summers and minus 40 during winters. So you can imagine how tough is the life for the locals and wildlife here. Coming to my objectives, so I studied the population and breeding biology of these birds. To do so, I visited each and every nesting site at the interval of 10 to 20 days between May to October months during 2016 and 17. I walked wetland peripheries to count these birds and separated these birds based on their age class, like adults, subadults, juvenile, and also studied what are the factors which are affecting their breeding biology in these wetlands. As you can see, the population status of black-necked crane during spring, summer, and autumn, and it hasn't changed in these years. Like 80 to 1980 individuals were counted during both years, including adults, subadults, and chicks. But in terms of breeding success, if you see the trend line in the red, just ignore the mathematical functions. So you will see a slight change, or you can say the decrease in the breeding success of black-necked cranes, right, starting from 1995 to 2017. So previous data is from the previous literature, and these 2 years data you can see in 2016 and 17 is from my study. So there is a decreasing line in the breeding success trend. To find out the causes, we monitored these nests and found that there were about 29 to 31 total pairs, of which 19 to 21 breeding pairs were present, and they laid about 38 to 42 eggs during these 2 years. About 28 eggs or chicks were lost due to various reasons, which we could decipher like the predation by dogs. In 2016, about 9 chicks were predated by dogs, whereas in 2017, 11 chicks were predated by dogs. Flood also claimed few individuals, usually which happened during summer season when usually snow melts from the glaciers and mountain tops, and that increases the water level in wetlands. So it claimed about 2 eggs during 2016 and 4 eggs during 2017. However, we could not ascertain certain reasons for loss of 16 eggs during 2016 and 13 during 2017, which could be due to other carnivores, dogs, or perhaps by the ravens, which sometimes attack the nesting sites of black-necked cranes. So we calculated about the 29 to 33% breeding success during these 2 years, which is very less than the above years, where the first study which showed that it has the 60% of breeding success. So as you know, that dogs causes a huge loss to wildlife in terms of sometime to breeding species. We consider dog as companion, friend, and family, and even portray them in our series and movies sometime as our companion and friend. Not just modern world, but also in our ancient civilizations and mythologies, dogs have been portrayed as a significant creatures. As you know that the dogs have been evolved from the wolves, and this depiction shows how wolf has been evolved into a pet. So there are certain issues related to the dogs, which is competition. And this competition usually happened with the other carnivores and wildlife species. Disease transmission, which happened like the rabies and the canine distemper to other species. Extinction, globally dogs have claimed about 180 species extinction, and genome pollution, which is hybridization with other canid species. So why a friend is turning into foes? There are certain reasons which are related to humans. And there are two reasons, which is introduction and fertilization. First off, if I talk about the introduction, then we have introduced dogs into new sites like the Galapagos Islands. And there is this example where in an island in New Zealand, a free-ranging dog, a single individual of free-ranging dog killed about the 500 kiwis. So this is the impact of a single individual of the species in wildlife abundant area. Another key reason is the fertilization, which often happen due to the irresponsible ownership by the humans. To study the impact of dogs on the wildlife, including the black-necked crane, I used a combined approach, which was the combination of certain methods like the behavioral observations, breeding biology, perception of local people towards dog, and diet of dogs. In terms of observation, I observed that there was 10% of observations in which dog harassed or predated on duck species like bar-headed goose and red-shelled duck. In terms of crane, it was about 10% or to 20% disturbance, while predation rate was high because I regularly monitored their activity. And also, gray heron was affected by free-ranging dogs. When we asked local people about their perception towards dog, then the respondents revealed that 34% of unowned free-ranging dogs predated on livestock, and 10% the respondent revealed that these unowned dogs also predate on wildlife. Whereas the owned dogs, the pet dogs, they impacted wildlife. So about 6% of the respondent agreed that their dogs are harming wildlife. So we also studied the diet of dogs through their scat analysis. As we know that dog is a facultative scavenger, which means it is an omnivore species. So we found a range of food items in its scat, including ungulates, lagomorphs, rodentia, birds, plant, and human-derived material like seeds, polythene, cloth, and paper pieces. And about 15% of dog's diet came from the wild species, which are like blue sheep, Tibetan urgali, birds like passeriforms, anseriforms, Himalayan marmot, pika, etc. Apart from dogs, another challenge for the black-necked crane and other water birds is the tourism. If you see, there is a certain spike in the red line, which denotes the Indian tourists. After the release of Three Idiots, there was a certain spike in the number of Indian tourists in Ladakh because this movie showed various landscapes of this region in the movie, and it got very famous on television, and subsequently people started coming here for sightseeing. And now if you see, in recent time it has reached up to 3.2 lakh tourists per annum in Ladakh. So these numbers are very uh, alarming for a fragile ecosystem like Ladakh. So along with these tourists, there are certain problems which are related with them, is like the trekking and pollution. In this picture, you can see the problem of solid waste management is a key issue in camping sites. Often tourists leave these solid waste in the respective tent site, and which often create problem for the local wildlife and degradation of habitat. Another key issue is the off-road driving, which often you will see in Ladakh. Over enthusiasm sometimes leads to them for months, even for weeks, to the shorelines, in muddy shorelines. But these shorelines are the key breeding habitats of nesting birds like bar-headed goose and gulls, etc., and also black-necked crane. So people often damage these nesting colonies and nesting sites by doing some illegal activities. Apart from these challenges, recently the status of black-necked crane has been downgraded as a near threatened, which was earlier proposed as least concern. But after a huge UN cry from our side, the people from India, the group of conservationists and researchers approached to the IUCN committee, and then we wrote them back that this is not done, and because of small populations comes in Ladakh, which is very important for India, and also as a satellite population for Tibet. So after a long discussion, they agreed to downlist this bird as near threatened, but they told that as they have about the 10,000 individuals, so they will certainly not keep it as a vulnerable. But this act has created some issue for this species, because now developmental activities will be easily passed in terms of EIA and all. As you know, the example from the Tawang, the dam in Tawang was stopped due to the presence of wintering population of black-necked crane. And it happened because it was a vulnerable species, it was a threatened species, but now things might change in near future for this species in India and Tibet. To summarize my results, as you know, I provided some insight on population and which was stable over the years. We found about 90 to 21 breeding pairs during 2 years of study. And we found dog as a key cause for breeding failure of black-necked cranes in Ladakh. And pastoralists, the locals, also revealed that the unowned free-ranging dogs were a problem for them because they were predating on their livestock. So based on our study, we recommended a few suggestions, you can say, like the prioritization of crucial habitats for nesting sites of black-necked crane and other species. And there are certain species like the Tibetan argali and Tibetan gazelle, which has number below 500 in Ladakh. So these are certain species which need our special attention and conservation intervention. So to do this, there should be removal of unknown free-ranging dogs from inside protected area, which should be done by any delay. And there should be an awareness among the locals and defense personnel, because they should have some ethical ownership of these dogs, which they use for to secure their campuses and their livestock. So they should keep them in their premises leashed. They should not unleash them to wilderness. Finally, this study was the part of our major project, which was funded by the Department of Wildlife Protection, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, and Ministry of Environment and Forest. And I would like to thank following people and organizations for providing me this opportunity. Thank you, Julie.
Who could have thought that domesticated and free-ranging dogs can threaten the existence of wild birds like this magnificent black-necked crane? Neeraj, Mahar, thank you so much for enlightening us on these issues and also the threats of trekking, off-roading, and tourism in fragile ecosystems like the Trans-Himalaya of Ladakh. I'm sure our audience will be much more careful when they plan their next visit to Ladakh, the land of the black-necked crane. Thank you once again, Neeraj, and our best wishes for your conservation efforts.